Please listen to this. This is extremely dire as far as what people are having to experience right now in other places of the world other than just here in America. The Lebanon people is where my first wife's second husband come from. That's the president of the bank over there. And those times since that ammonia nitrate bomb blew up and killed several hundred people. Probably will never know for sure how many people got lamed and injured. But since then, it has been nothing but a downhill struggle pertaining to all this. Once more, my first wife, her first husband was from Saudi Arabia, and her second husband is from this area. Please watch.
As if Lebanon didn't have enough problems already, along comes another, a petrol shortage.
Suddenly the whole country is, destroyed within a couple of months, and it's just too much to bear.
Lebanon's currency has lost 90% of its value in less than 2 years. Inflation is soaring. A massive blast in the Beirut port killed more than 200 people last year. Coronavirus killed thousands more. And the country hasn't been able to form a proper government in almost a year. Taken all together, it's grim.
We're going to hell. These long lines outside the gas stations are a manifestation of a much bigger problem, of a government that's bankrupt, that's broke, that doesn't have enough hard currency to import fuel to keep the lights on.
Also in short supply, fuel to run the country's decrepit power plants. The normal lengthy power outages are getting even longer. The electric grid is antiquated. Those who can afford it depend on private generators to make up for the difference.
It's getting tougher.
Lebanon's caretaker energy minister, Raymond Rajar, warns as bad as things are now, worse may be yet to come.
The blackout will be a true blackout, not public electricity blackout. It will be a complete darkness, and I think this is, it's a calamity. It's not a scenario that's livable.
Iraq has reportedly promised to provide cut-rate fuel, but it hasn't arrived yet. And meanwhile, Lebanon's squabbling politicians do nothing to fix the country's many problems.
So we are just buying time. We are kicking the can down the road without reforms, without a complete solution for the sector.
And Lebanon is running out of time, fuel, and it seems everything else. Ben Whitman, CNN, Beirut.
Still to come tonight, in just a few hours, Iranians will be choosing a new president, but many are choosing to stay home. Why is that? We'll discuss just ahead.
Once more, whenever you're dealing with all these uncertainties that are happening,
is being tested.
They're not just happening in one place. It's happening worldwide. It's happening in places that a lot of people never even imagine towards it happening at. Just a while ago I heard where, I think it was the mayor or somebody in New York City putting out basically an order that if people didn't come back to their businesses and start to work, I think it was long about August or September, that they can look forward to experiencing the consequences that comes along with that, because so many people have gotten used now to working at home, towards not having to have a babysitter, etc. So many people have gotten readjusted to this new lifestyle, and now all of a sudden the rich man, the powerful man, the banking industry, and everybody else demands for you to come and do your business back like you did before pre-COVID ever hit. And as far as the troubles that we're facing here in America pertaining to the heat, the more demand upon to the electrical grids and stuff, we're going to see similar type situations, not just in Texas, but all over this country, pertaining to major blackouts. Because the system needs overhauling. It's not just the roads, it's not just the bridges, it's not just the infrastructure, it's everything that has been abused and neglected for many, many years. And just like these poor people over there in Lebanon that recently went through that bomb explosion that desecrated their city, now they're looking at a shortage of this. Then you can look at various islands like Puerto Rico and other places that got hit basically for the past 3 to 5 years with major hurricanes. A lot of those places still to this day are living in total chaos. Kind of like the people living down in South America and Mexico, living in total chaos. And you have to ask yourself a question. What is going on? What is happening to our world? It's very simple. Biblical Bible prophecy is coming true, pertaining to it was as the noise of thunder. One of the beasts said, "Come and see." Woe be unto the inhabitants here upon to the planet. It talks about this in the book of Revelations. It talks about to be thy faithful unto death. It talks about how that he's not found our works perfect yet. It talks about how to go back and redo and get your commitment right with Christ and get your commitment right with God. It talks about how that he rather you either be hot or cold. If you're lukewarm, he'll spew thee out of thy mouth. It talks about all the irregularities that are going to be plaguing the Homo sapien race here upon to the planet in the last days. Once more, people obviously don't want peace. Not around in this area. If they did, they would support a wide world ministry pertaining to the windmill ministry that has been beaten and trying to get its message out to the general public now for 30-something years. Still don't have no great support team. Still don't see no Joe Osteen support team that's in behind the windmill ministries. Everything that I've been having to do on my own. Collecting this material, putting out this material, go gathering this, go gathering that, wear out this vehicle, wear out that vehicle, wear my joints out towards walking over here and putting stuff out in the church world and doing this and doing that. Everybody right now is in total chaos. It's in a free-for-all. Anarchy. And because of it, people's lives are suffering. And until people are willing to pay attention and listen to the messenger, even though they may not like the message, until people are willing to do that, we're going to see things escalate and totally get even more so out of hand, not just over in Libya, not just over in other places of the Middle East, not just over in Australia where they've had major droughts and fires, not just down in South America where they've had other events towards burning out the rainforest, but it's going to be right here in the USA towards shortages of supplies, regardless whether it's wood supplies, clothing supplies, electrical supplies, or even food supplies. It's chaotic. God has lifted his hand off of the planet that everybody's been taking advantage of, and now we are at a sink or swim scenario, not just here in America, but throughout the world. Throughout the whole world. And there's certain people out there that knows what's going on. They know it just as well as I do, but it's easier for them to continue to cast me off into a setting of darkness or cast me off into a setting of somebody that's emotionally, chemically imbalanced. It's easier for them to do that than for them to come clean. And I'm talking about people right here in Northwest Tennessee, in my own home county, in my own hometown, pertaining to up in Dresden, Tennessee, or Kenton, Tennessee, or Sharon, Tennessee. These people, they know what that they have done wrong, but they're not willing to come clean because of it. And somebody like me gets on a stump and tries to lead them in the right direction, and instead of me getting led in the right direction, what happens to me? Right? I get I get falsely accused and lied upon, etc., etc. I'm just going to use this for a quick illustration. This past Sunday, I wound up going to a church that I hadn't been to in almost about a year, at First Christian Church at 1200 Community Park Road, there in Dyersburg, Tennessee, zip code 38024. I had been to the church services on 2 different occasions up until COVID hit. I felt like this Sunday that God was leading me back to that church just to see how that they have matured or grown or whatever. And of course, whenever I get into the service, I realize that it's a completely different preacher, okay, that had just come on board 4 or 5 months ago, that come from Southern California, that was preaching a very, very authentic, good message as far as I'm concerned, about how that it's not easy. That it's not as easy or it's not as simple as what a lot of people would like to make it out towards living that good Christian, faithful, righteous life. Anybody can claim to be a Christian, but to live a good, clean, righteous life requires a great deal of different methods and policies that you're going to have to pick up on in order to maintain that type of lifestyle. Well, the preacher was preaching on that it's not that simple, verifying the fact that it's not that simple to maintain a righteous lifestyle. It's simple to live a Christian lifestyle as far as a so-called Christian lifestyle, but it is difficult to live a righteous lifestyle. And I will agree with him 100%. So anyways, while I was in there, one of the greeters come to me, wanted to know who I was. I filled out my little card towards second, third time visitor. And this lady invited me Monday night to a program that they had going on called Celebrate Recovery. So Monday night, I prayed about it. And I asked God, I said, God, I really don't have no alcohol problems or no drug problems or no other kind of serious addictions. And God stopped me. He said, Dennis, you have an addiction pertaining to food and sugar. Not getting back on your feet and exercising properly. He said, you do have an addiction. You do need to go. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go to this Celebrate Recovery. They was basically bringing in the same type of ideology that I brought in from Denver, Colorado, pertaining to the 3 H's, habits, hang-ups, and heartaches, pertaining to possibly trying to open up a recovery shelter right here of the 12-step program. That's what they was going over the night that I went and visited. Well, everything pulled off like it was supposed to. They had little drinks and a couple little sandwiches and some little knickknacks to eat on. And then later, the men got with the men's side, the women got with the women's side. We all sat in a circle, and everybody had 5 minutes to explain their little story towards what had brought them into the recovery center to begin with. And of course, some people was over drugs, some people was over alcohol, some people was over being lazy, some people was over porn, some people was over other things that I really shouldn't talk about pertaining to security and confidentiality issues. So I won't bring them up right now. But anyways, I touched off on a few highlights of my life towards the close encounters of death and various things towards how that the church communities around here had basically turned their back on me, towards isolating me away from any of their worship, and how that I was treated like a red-haired stepchild in this area, basically treating me like Martin Luther, excommunicating from me altogether, and people not wanting to have nothing to do with me. This was after they attacked me and tried to ruin me during the time that my brother was living. So now they've done a 180-degree turn towards, they went from attacking me towards trying to torment my life, now towards steering clear and telling all kinds of miscellaneous lies about me. And you may be saying to yourself, well, how do you know that they're telling lies about you, Dennis? I'm fixing to tell you how I know. A while ago, I got a telephone call from security at First Christian Church at 1200 Community Park Road, Dyersburg, Tennessee, 38024. This security officer told me that I made people feel uncomfortable during the 12-step program while I was sitting around in a circle, and that I had humiliated an individual that was conducting the program by the name of L-Y-L-E, Lee, or Lolly or something like that. But anyways, it was Alan Poe that was speaking to me, that was associated with the security in that church. He goes, well, I hate to tell you this, Mr. Jackson, but you brought up some things that we found to be inappropriate in the 12-step program, talking about sexuality issues pertaining to a penis and a legenda. I said, wait a minute. I said, none of that was brought up during the actual meeting. I said, I did sit down and have a little powwow with Leo, or whatever his name is, the group therapist. I said, but it was on a one-to-one conversation, and I explained to him that if he was upset because I had mentioned a few issues about what went on in Kenton, Tennessee, whenever I mentioned something about the Antichrist, the mark of the beast, a one world government, and they wound up putting me in a mental institution on account of it in 1983. I said, if you're that unstable to the point that you cannot accept the truth pertaining to the truth of my testimony around a group of people, I said, what are you going to do one day if a gay person comes in here or a lesbian person comes in here that's had a sexual change towards a male becoming a female or a female becoming a male? And I guess because I approached this person that way, I must have humiliated him or intimidated him to the point that once we dispersed, he must have got on the phone and contacted his buddy pertaining to security, and now I'm getting a telephone call telling me that I'm no longer welcome to come to the 12-step recovery shelter meeting, that they had contacted the Dyersburg Police Department in Dyer County, and that they done a reference on my name and found out that I had been kicked out of almost every church in Dyer County, in Dyersburg and the surrounding areas in Dyersburg. And I explained to this guy that I was talking to, this security officer, I said, isn't it funny? For the past 4 years, y'all have been the only church that I have associated with down in Dyer County. Because give or take, it's probably about 35, 40 miles from where I live to go down to Dyersburg to this particular church. And of course, you're looking at round trip 80 miles, 80 to 100 miles. Well, you don't go 80 to 100 miles to be ridiculed. You don't go 80 to 100 miles so that people will frown on you and tell you that you're not welcome. And you for darn sure don't drive 80 miles so that somebody can contact the judicial system to the point that now they've got a record of you that's contrary to their own policies towards keeping things supposedly confidential. Unless there was some sort of an event that occurred towards something getting out of hand, somebody getting loud or angry or becoming disruptive, I can't see where this particular church, through the recovery 12-step program, had a right to disclose my name, violating their own policies pertaining to confidentiality laws. Because once they made that telephone call and they looked me up and they told this security officer what they told him, that they knowed all about me, that I'd been barred and banned from all these different churches in Dyer County, all they was doing was lying. All they was doing was bringing up false accusations, because I haven't been to no other churches other than the church there in Dyer County. But it just proves how that the fish story will go from a 6-inch fish to a 12-inch fish to an 18-inch fish, and the next thing you know, it turns into a whale story. I have been banned from a great deal of churches in Madison County down by Jackson, Tennessee. I've been banned from a great deal of churches here either in Weakley County or in Obion County. Okay? I've been banned because of all the lies and all the gossip and the rumors that's went on the internet. But it just proves how much things can get out of hand pertaining to the lies of assassinating one's character down in Dyer County, which is a big county. I've only had one problem in Dyer County since I moved back here in 2014, and that was within the first year that I'd come back here. I think it was in 2015 that I was down there, and they pulled me over because I was being too flamboyant towards putting out my message, and I was flying American flags. In other words, I didn't have a Dyer County plate. They realized that I was from another county, which violated their principles, because I wasn't from their county towards being a homeboy, and because of it, they picked on me, and they couldn't come up with no other ticket other than to ticket me for me not having a rear view mirror in or on my glass, even though I had a topper on my truck. That it wouldn't have done no good to have had a rear view mirror on the center of my glass to begin with, because you're not going to be able to see through your topper and see through your back glass and two other glasses looking at your topper. But I did have two real big factory Toyota Tundra mirrors on both sides of the truck that come out of the factory that way. They thought that they was going to be able to push some sort of agenda in making me pay for a big ticket down there in Dyersburg, in which once I went to court and I explained it to the judge what had happened, he throwed it out. He throwed it out. So that's been the only incident that I've had in Dyersburg in Dyer County, and that was in front of some sort of a supermarket that they decided to contact the police and have me basically shooken down to see if I was legit towards having insurance and seeing if my automobile was registered in the right name and making sure that I didn't have no outstanding warrants and making sure this and making sure that. But it hurt their feelings to the point that they was dead set towards making sure that I was going to walk away injured, even by writing me out an illegitimate ticket. Well, it just goes to show you about the illegitimate precinct down there that picks up on a little bit of gossip towards what's going on up here 2 or 3 counties above that county. And now they want to stretch it out and say, oh yeah, Mr. Jackson, he's been banned from a great deal of churches in Dyersburg. How can I be banned from churches in Dyersburg if I've never went to them? The only church that I've ever went to is this particular church that I keep telling you about. This First Christian Church. I think in total I've went there 4 times. The guy goes, well, you're not banned from coming to church. You're only banned from coming to this particular 12-step recovery program. I go, look, you've done let the cat out of the bag. As far as I'm concerned, you're in violation of your own policies, because now you have exposed my name to the judicial system in that county. You've done violated your own principles on a confidentiality law, and you can call it the HIP law, you can call it whatever law, but the bottom line is this guy had done already contacted the authorities in that county or in that city. I said, besides that, how do you think I'm going to feel by walking into a service, having to walk on eggshells, knowing that everybody and their brother is going to be watching me that's associated with the fundamentals of the church, or that's associated with security in that church. And if I daresomely even cough the wrong way, or look at somebody the wrong way, or pull out my telephone and record the events that's going on the stage the wrong way, the next thing you know, I'm going to be called down and have basically the law come down there and give me a physical going over, and possibly even go to jail. I said, do you really expect for me to go to a service now after you contacted me and telling me these things that you have contacted the officials about? Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, Mr. Jackson, is what he said. I go, I tell you what, before you get too verbal in what you're doing, there's about 10 other witnesses that was in that circle. Maybe you need to get with somebody that goes from person to person and ask them how they felt about me being there. Ask them if they felt uncomfortable about me being there. Because as far as I'm concerned, everything went along hunky-dory. I said what I needed to say in the time frame that I had to say it in, and I let it go at that. I said it was the personal one-to-one conversation that I had with the team leader. I said that was the guy that took everything and blowed it out of perspective, just like whatever cop that he called in there to make a record of it, a file of it, he blowed it all out of perspective, because I know for a fact I haven't been to no other church other than the First Christian Church down in Dyer County. Unbelievable how my enemy, the Bible says, is out to kill, steal, and destroy, and is the author of confusion. So all these problems that has initiated all over the world, regardless whether it be the problems in America or the problems in China or the problems in Timbuktu, they're only going to escalate. And they're only going to get worse until we see a turnaround pertaining to a major revival that will re-revolutionize the earth, re-revolutionize the planet in the way that God foresees for it to be re-revolutionized. As far as I'm concerned, it's nothing but a cluster, you know what, right now, pertaining to it being a Wild Wild West show, nothing but anarchy that's going on not just here in America, but going on all over the world. The people over in Libya, the biggest majority of them, don't even believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. They believe in Allah and preach it in the name of Allah. I had somebody tell me this morning, one of my buddies on the telephone, he said, you know what, if you was under the pretense of Allah preaching the Muslim religion, he said, you probably wouldn't be getting all these troubles with all these churches. I said, you're probably right. Or if you was preaching some other far-fetched ideology like Hinduism or Voodooism or whatever, they'd probably welcome that. But now you get to telling them the seriousness of what you're telling them about, the very stuff that you was told about as a young child pertaining to the Antichrist, the one world government, the New World Order, the two witnesses, the opening of the seals, the prophecies out of Daniel, that whenever you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, that's whenever you get all this resistance and all these lies that's coming from the so-called churches here in America. Which, once more, what was Christ talking to? Who was Christ talking to whenever he was talking to the seven churches that is now coming alive today, as the Holy Spirit was talking to Satan's churches? He was talking to Satan's churches. Satan didn't have churches back whenever these messages was being brought out, give or take about 90 years after the birth and the crucifixion of the Lord Jesus Christ. Satan didn't have established churches then like he does now. Now, there's no doubt Satan was alive and well, and there was various people that worshiped Satan and knew that they was worshiping Satan. But today, they're imposters. And they know that they're imposters because they're not real. They don't teach a message of righteousness. They don't believe and walk in a life of righteousness. And because of it, as far as I'm concerned, they are worshipers of Satan. Now, there's no doubt none of us is perfect. All of us make mistakes, including myself. And I'm trying every day to draw closer and closer to the Lord Jesus Christ. But whenever you take under consideration, one of the things that Jesus said to his disciples as he was praying up in the mountain, on the third time, finding them asleep, he said, sleep on, for the spirit be willing, but the flesh be weak. He was talking to a group of people back then that wasn't exposed to TV, electricity, running water, all the other accommodations that we have today pertaining to the modern advances of humanity. He was talking to a group of people that had never been exposed to the chemicals pertaining to meth and heroin and crack and cocaine and hormones that they now put in chickens and food and stuff. He was talking to a group of people back then that was just about as pure as he was pertaining to what they was eating and drinking and fasting about. And if they back then didn't have enough strength for the flesh be weak, but the spirit be willing, how incredibly corrupt do you think the flesh is of today? Whenever you have been bombarded with all these advancements that Satan has brought into the existence in one form or the other. Regardless whether it come in the form of chemicals, come in the form of drinks, come in the form of electricity or running water, or the internet, the telephone, Android, smartphone, automobiles, etc., etc. Whenever you get to looking at the strength of the flesh back then versus today, there's no comparison to how strong that the flesh of man was back then during Jesus' era. And if in Jesus' era, Jesus said, for the flesh be weak, but the spirit be willing, how strong or how weak do you think that the flesh is of today after being exposed to all these things? See what I'm saying? You know exactly what I'm saying. That puts us where we are today. The only thing that I know to do for the church down in Duisburg, called the First Christian Church, is to pray for not just the individual that obviously has some sort of a problem in communicating about heterosexual and men wanting to become women and women wanting to become men. Obviously, this must be a subject that he obviously was offended in towards me bringing it up, because I use that for an example that if you can't discuss these things openly among a 12-step program, and if you can't discuss the things that I personally have been through, even though you may not understand it, towards all these churches kicking me out and basically going all the way back to 1983 in Kenton, Tennessee, whenever I was first talking about the one world government, the new world order, the Antichrist, the mark of the beast, etc., etc., etc. If you don't feel comfortable about these things, maybe you're in the wrong position to be teaching to begin with. And I guess the old boy got offended in it and contacted security. And the next thing you know, I'm basically banded now from First Christian Church towards going to the 12-step program. Well, if I'm banded from the 12-step program, as far as I'm concerned, I'm banded from the sanctuary towards not going in there, because I'm going to feel like that if I go in there now, it's going to be nothing more or less than an entrapment. In other words, they'll be waiting lay. They'll be waiting low on me. They'll be hovering down in the bushes per se, towards waiting for me to make some sort of mistake. And it's like, we got you, we got you. See there, you was pointing your phone at somebody else other than the people up there on the stage. Get out of here. You're no longer welcome. We don't like you. We don't agree with you. Everybody else don't agree with you. They don't like your message. We know who you are. You're the messenger bringing forth a message. We don't like you. It don't matter if you hadn't never been to no church or not here in Dyer County. We don't like you. Get out of here. And if you don't get out of here, you're going to jail. That's what's probably going to happen. And because it's probably going to happen, and because it has happened in the past, I refuse to go down there and be humiliated again by a bunch of basically a freak show towards a bunch of people trying to point their finger that I'm the freak and they're the good guys. And the whole time, as far as I'm concerned, I'm the good guy and they're the bad guys. Especially if they all have the same concept as the group leader did, that decided that he didn't want to talk about various subjects, even though it's supposed to be an open door policy pertaining to going to these 12-step programs. And I'm sorry that I had to even bring this up, because ordinarily I keep that stuff confined, secluded, confidentiality. You know, I'm not going to mention no names. I'm not going to mention no people's specific testimonies towards what was said or what was done. But as far as I'm concerned, during the actual meeting of 10 or 11, 12 different people that was in there, I don't forgot now how many it was. It may not have been but 9 or 10. There was absolutely no disturbances, and everything went according to plan. It wasn't until I had a one-to-one conversation with this individual that took everything and blowed it out of proportion, just like the cop that come and investigated after receiving a telephone call. It was the cop that blowed it all out of proportion, which speaks volumes about not just that individual that was involved in that 12-step program, but it actually speaks volumes about the police force down in Dyersburg, Tennessee, in Dyer County. It is so sad in what the founder of the Windmill Ministries has had to be exposed to on a week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year level, especially since now my story is in fact coming out genuinely before the public. It is so sad. And as I sit and I watch things in Libya, and I watch things in America, and I watch things that Donald Trump was a part of pertaining to the January 6th insurrection, and I watched the migration problem happening down by the border, and I listen to President Putin and President Biden, and I see all these other problems that's coming over the horizon, I'm thinking to myself, my God, when are the true Christians going to stand up and say enough is enough of this type of hypocrisy? Because there's no doubt these demons, the majority of them, are working through the church sector. And if you get to looking at my life pertaining to my testimony, my true testimony, 99.9% of all my troubles have come from the church sector. They didn't come from the hobos. They didn't come from the prostitutes. They didn't come from the gypsies. They didn't come from people that wasn't concerned as far as being agnostic. They was coming from the people that already had a sense of belief. The same thing happened to the Lord Jesus Christ. It wasn't the hobos. It wasn't the bums. It wasn't the tramps that persecuted Christ. It was his very own people who had a form of belief. They had a sense of religion about them. Formalities that they went off of on a day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month or year-to-year basis. Those was the people that stood up against Christ. Those was the people that not only humiliated Christ, but those was the people that assassinated Christ. Had him assassinated of the hand of the government. Working illegitimately because of the wickedness of Satan. Now, 2,000 years later, you don't think that they're just as crafty today as what they was back then? Why, yeah. They're more crafty. They sure enough know what buttons to press and how to set up these entrapments. Just like the ATF setting up the entrapment down into the Davidians down in Waco, Texas in 1993. Selling them a bunch of guns that they never should have sold them to over a group of weak-minded people that was already scared to death, afraid that the sky was going to fall, that was considered a bunch of preppers at that time that was getting ready for Armageddon, the apocalypse. It was the ATF that preyed upon them people, that caused them to buy those guns illegitimately. And the next thing you know, it got out of hand on a 51-day standoff. What else is going to get out of hand? You know, we've went through that. We went through the Oklahoma bombing. We went through Ruby Ridge, which happened the same year. The Twin Towers got attacked within a few days before the deal happened with down in Waco, down in Mount Carmel. Then we had 9/11. Then we've had all these other problems. Now we're just now trying to get over COVID, and we're seeing where these gas shortages are happening over in Libya, and total hell, horror has befallen upon these people's lives, to the point that I'm sure it's become a danger even to walk outside, much less voice your opinion about what's actually going on in your country. The same way if you was in Puerto Rico or some of these other areas out in Mexico or South America. Now the bigwigs, the politicians, they can get on TV and they can act like that they got a solution to all the world's problems. But the bottom line is this: they don't have a solution to none of them. And when it comes to safety and security, they have failed the American people again and again and again. And my question is this: when are the people going to wake up that continues to keep putting these people in power, keep putting these people in these positions that's supposed to be protecting us, pretending to dereliction of duty? When is the people going to wake up towards stop putting the same people that's been in power for 25 or 30 years to get them out of there? Vote them out of there. We got a sheriff right here in Weakley County that's been elected 9 different times. 9 different times. 20-something years as the same sheriff. You don't think he's got clonies all over this county? People that does stuff that, as long as they don't commit murder, they can basically get away with whatever that they want to get away with. But at the same time, he's got his spies out there to where if one person steps out of line, such as myself, and let's say if I wanted to go down to Cadillacs or Hillary's or Stables or some nightclub and drink a beer, oh my God, they'd put it all over the freaking network. They would try to make a laughing stock out of me because I had went into a club or a tavern or a bar and I drunk a beer. That's the hypocrisy that the true Christians are going through today. Not just me. Not just me. But all of us. You know, they'll pat Bill Clinton on the back because he got caught with Monica Lewinsky. But they'll take some poor sucker like Jimmy Swaggart and they'll put him on a cross towards wanting to crucify him because he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. But somebody like Bill Clinton, they'll glorify. They'll idolize. Well, we idolized the Clintons. We made more money during the Clintons than we ever did. Right? But was the money that you made legitimate? I'm telling you, things don't get turned around and turned around quick. The Bible will fulfill itself, as Christ said that he will return to gather up what few that are trying to live a righteous, holy life. And he will take us out of this misery and out of this torment. And he will come in flaming fire, taking vengeance upon them who know not God, and upon them who obey not the gospel. He will be coming for a great reward for those who have died before us, that's laying in the graves asleep, and those who are still alive. He will come for a great reward for us. But for the others, if they think that they've seen sorrow, if they think that they've seen misery, if they think that they've seen horror, they haven't seen nothing yet. Because whenever Christ comes back and he catches everything on fire that will burn, that is burnable, regardless whether it be residential or commercial, and everything goes up in flames upon this planet, and all the smoke goes up into the atmosphere to the point that the sun will not shine properly and the crops will not grow, you will see cannibalism in the world grow on a level unimaginable towards people becoming zombies and eating other people. It will be that devastating here upon to the planet. Because you figure as God's coming and circling over the world, burning everything down, he'll probably also bring down a great deal of satellites that's up there floating around that should have already come down to begin with. He'll kill all communications. People will be put out into the dark. They'll be put into a dinosaur type state, to the point that if you think you're seeing chaos now, you ain't seen chaos. You hadn't seen nothing bad comparison to what's going to happen during the Great Tribulation. Oh yeah, we're going through a certain period of the tribulation right now, and it has become a bit more horrifying, but it's not going to be nothing in comparison to what's going to go on whenever God comes back and he strikes a match and he burns this thing down to the ground. Good luck to all of us. Once more, we thank you for listening. Shalom. God bless. God bless America. And good luck to each and every one of us. Shalom.